The Big Footy Port Adelaide podcast is proudly sponsored by New Vision.
My team, kinda power. I love the power. I love the power.
Hi and welcome to the Big Footy Port Adelaide podcast, a show about all things Port Adelaide Footy Club. As always, I'm your host Macca 19, and joining me in the co-host chair, we got Fishing Rick.
Macca, mate, how you going?
Good, buddy. Yourself?
Oh, yeah, very excited tonight.
Another week goes by.
Very good week.
Very good week, I think.
Oh, I think every week for the last 48 has been pretty bloody good, really, the way we've been going. So why not add another one to the list?
Why not? And our guest on the podcast this evening, we're speaking with DonDraper.
Boys, how are we all?
Good, buddy. Good.
That's good.
Great to have you back.
Thank you.
Look, let's get straight into it and talk about one of our new recruits this week, Michael Voss. He's taking over Philip Walsh's job as the new midfield manager. He's got experience with the AIS and obviously coached Brisbane as well. How do we think about that one?
Love it. Absolutely love it.
How good is this?
Just huge. I just think if I was a young midfielder at Port Adelaide right now, I'd be so happy. I mean, I know that his coaching career at Brisbane, I mean, it was pretty hit and miss, but as a pure midfield coach, he's going to be great. And all those young boys, I'm particularly noting Ollie Wines. I think really looking forward to see what Vossi can do there next year.
Yep, absolutely.
Vossi, the Viper, the Vixen, the vitriolic man. I couldn't get another V in there. All the V's. No, he's going to be fantastic, isn't he? It's, I mean, as someone said, don't get him in the list management department, but, I mean, that's not his job. And I notice he's midfield manager, so I guess he might be overseeing Josh Carr and our ruck coach is Reeves. Is that right?
I think so, yep.
Yes, so he'd probably be overseeing those two gentlemen, I would imagine, with that title, you'd guess.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think he'll be working on strategy, sort of midfield strategy as well. And look, I think he brings a different skill set to what Walsh had. Obviously, Walsh was such a fantastic tactical coach. I think we'll see that Voss is a fantastic development coach. And I don't think we can really take anything from his head coaching career at Brisbane. We've seen over the last sort of 4 or 5 years a number of outstanding assistant coaches fail at taking on the senior job. Obviously, Vossi doesn't have any sort of assistant experience yet. But I think he's going to make a fantastic assistant coach. And
on a pure national profile aspect too, it's absolutely fantastic to get such a big name in as an assistant coach. I know we get a lot of very positive press now, but I mean, Michael Voss is a very well respected footballer, and even in the media, he was on Fox Footy all this season. So to have him come in, it's just going to be great for us, you know. And I really think that, as Koshi said, we're pretty much going to be everyone's second team, hopefully. So
hope so.
Well, I think we should actually strip it back a little bit and not pat ourselves on the back too much, and maybe have a little bit of a look at the potential negatives. And one of them, Macca, you thought he might be a good development coach, what you said just there, but I guess one of the criticisms of Michael Voss was the lack of development in the junior players whilst he was at Brisbane, and that was part of the reason they had a bit of an exodus there at the time of his departure. So, you know, maybe is that one of the things that he's coming to us to maybe learn, to get some new skills from Port Adelaide, to maybe round off his skill set to be a potential coach again in the future?
I'm not sure I agree with that too much. I think if you look at, especially the midfield, and he's going to be looking after our midfield, if you look at the midfielders at Brisbane, they've got a fantastic midfield, and he turned a lot of careers around. You know, he turned someone like Tom Rockcliffe, who was picked in the pre-season draft. When he was drafted, he was a slow, fat, unfit, small forward. He turned him into an elite midfielder. Same thing with Jack Redden. Look at how well Daniel Rich started his career under Michael Voss as well. You know, guys like Pierce Hanley, he's been able to turn his career into a nothing sort of back flanker into an elite midfielder as well. I think he's done a fantastic job with a number of Brisbane players.
Yeah, good argument against. I'm beaten. I'll give up. I'll roll over. I'm with you. Yeah, good comment. Nah,
there was certainly parts of Brisbane's team which did lack development, and obviously places like the forward line and things like that, they've been really struggling to find some tolls and develop some tolls to help out guys like Jonathan Brown and Daniel Merritt. But I think if you look at their smalls, I think they've developed reasonably well.
It could have been lack of structure that he had in place as well. I mean, he did really jump into that senior position quite quickly. And probably with the benefit of hindsight, probably him and Brisbane should have gone down a different path, at least for the first couple of years for his development. So, well, I mean, I'm a bit advocate of getting people with experience and people learning from experience, you know, and I think Michael being in the system, then out of it temporarily and wanting to come back into it can only be a good thing. And I'm really interested to see what he can do with the midfield group.
What I loved about Voss's comments was that I think he said the willingness to improve was what sold him. So it's great to see that this group and our coaches are taking nothing for granted, and we know that we need to get better. You know, so it's fantastic.
Yep. For me, it's guys like Andrew Moore and Aaron Young. That's who I'm looking forward to seeing under Vossi next year and seeing how they develop.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Moore I think next season is almost at a bit of a crossroads for him. You know, I mean, we all rate him pretty highly, but he probably needs to deliver a lot more next season than he has this season. So Vossi will hopefully do wonders for him. Big body as well, so he will know how to throw. We can teach him how to throw that around.
All right, well, let's have a quick chat about trade week. Obviously, we've got another big recruit in Patrick Ryder. How good is that? We got our man. It costs us pick 17 and 37. Do you think that was fair, and how do you think he's going to help our side next year?
I think given the circumstances, 17 should have been enough. We had to give up 37, but he's going to be worth it. He's an absolute star. I mean, I pinch myself that he's going to be lining up for us. Considering how talented I think our group is at the moment, to add a player like that in, yeah, it's amazing.
It's huge. I mean, at the start of this season, if you had said to me that Patrick Ryder would be lining up for Port Adelaide in 2015, I would have absolutely pinched myself and said, no way.
Yeah. And I mean, you think about recruiting players that fill needs as well as being extremely talented. And this year we probably said, with Redden going down and Renouf being our other ruck option, if we could just get another ruckman in and maybe another tall forward, and we've managed to bring in someone who can fill both those voids and is extremely talented. I love Patrick Ryder. He's amazing. His goal against North Melbourne in that elimination final this year, where he just took the grab 45 out and then nonchalantly snapped it through, was incredible.
It was huge.
Yeah.
What do you think, Rick?
I think what Don was looking for when he was talking about Vossi was probably credibility, and he's another one of those signings that gives the club more credibility if we need it. I mean, the fact that a great player like Paddy Ryder, coming from what was supposed to be one of the big four Victorian clubs and wanting to come to little old Adelaide and Port Adelaide is a great coup for the club. And I guess what it shows is our structure at the club must be very sound. Our leadership group obviously is clearly professional. And for everyone in the club to be able to embrace Paddy enough to make him believe that we are the place that he should be playing football is a credit to Port Adelaide Football Club. Now, in relation to team dynamics, look, he's probably the missing link, and if we had him in that Hawthorn game, we probably would have won because we were exposed by being down one tall there for a little while, and everyone's been banging on about needing another tall player. And how do we play the two ruckmen? Obviously, both of them like to be playing the dominant ruck position, and obviously Lobie's got his hands on that, and Ryder would be coming over knowing that's the case. What's going to happen there?
I'd be starting Ryder at centre half forward or in a forward pocket, starting Lobie in the ruck, and then halfway through a quarter, swapping Ryder into the ruck and giving Lobie a rest on the bench. I think that's probably the best way to do it. We can possibly push Lobie up forward, and hopefully he can take more than 2 marks inside 50 next year. But I think Ryder coming into the side is going to help Lobie hugely. I think it's a massive recruit, and I think it helps Lobie a lot, because Lobie had to shoulder pretty much the entire ruck burden the entire year this year. And he did such a great job at it, but he clearly needs support. Now he's going to get some support. Hopefully we can see Lobie having more of an impact around the ground.
Hopefully, yeah. What I loved about Lobie's year was that he was so good, but he was just a number one ruck, and he was working so hard. He must have been so tired, but we didn't really notice it. Like in that Fremantle game, that was the final. He was massive. I'm really excited to see how good he's going to be late in games when he's fresh. Like, he can have a chop out every maybe say 5-10 minutes a quarter even, and we got someone who can come in who's an A-grade ruckman in Paddy Ryder. So
I think
fantastic.
The other player you're probably forgetting about, well, there's probably a couple of players that are going to benefit. One is Jackson probably won't have to go into ruck much at all. And because obviously, no offence to Jackson, but Ryder's an upgraded version of him in the ruck. So that allows him to focus on what he does best, as being a key defender. And the other 2 players will be Westhoff and also Jay Shields as well. And especially Westy, that's going to allow him to probably roam up the ground more freely, play that almost quasi-wingman type role, and be a real handful for the opposition.
I think the good thing is that Ryder's very experienced at playing at centre half back, so we can still actually throw Trengove into the ruck and we don't actually lose anything like we have done in the past, which I think is fantastic. I think this is the biggest recruit we've had since Gavin Wanganeen.
I agree, yeah.
Well, that was the positive, Patrick Ryder. Now to the negative. There was another player that nominated Port Adelaide as his destination club. That was Daniel Gorringe. Unfortunately, a deal didn't get done. Not only did a deal not get done, his old man had a big whinge on or a bit of a meltdown on the Port Adelaide Facebook site on Thursday afternoon. The post got deleted after a couple of hours. And then Daniel goes and has a big whinge to the media as well the next day, saying that he got lied to, he's angry, he's embarrassed, he's never going to deal with Port Adelaide ever again.
Talk about burning your bridges, eh? I mean...
Not wrong.
God, and not only with Port Adelaide, but is he for real? Like, I could not... When his dad posted that and I saw those comments, I thought, look, it's unfortunate. His dad's obviously just an emotional guy, and he's said this, and poor Daniel must be sitting at home thinking, oh, God, Dad, shut up. And then for him to come out and almost say the same thing, not even in the heat of the moment, after time had passed. I mean, I feel sorry for him in the sense that he obviously wanted to get to Port Adelaide, and I believe that we would have tried to get him here.
Absolutely.
But unfortunately, it's the AFL. It's a cutthroat business, and as the Rolling Stones are coming to town, you can't always get what you want.
Yeah, he just sounds like an immature guy that's doesn't know how to play the game properly when you don't get your own way. Probably I sort of suffered the same sort of thing when I was a late teenager, early 20s, and probably a bit of a shame that, from my perspective, he didn't have more guidance from his family, which obviously doesn't sound like that great an influence from the comments that the dad made, but and also as player manager. I mean, and he's also forgotten, you guys might have already brought this up, that he could have come to us last year but decided to sign a new contract. So, on one hand, he was indecisive on what he wanted to do last year, and this year we tried to get him here. We from what I've read, we made an indication we'd try our hardest, and obviously Paddy Ryder was our focus, and understandably so, and it didn't work out. So, and I think paying even pick 37 might have been paying pick overs for him anyway. So I'm not too disappointed, and I guess we move on, and there'll be another young potential ruckman if we need one next year that we'll be able to get anyway.
Yeah. I mean, obviously there's been lots of rumours about his personality and that he's struggled to make relationships up at the Gold Coast. And look, I think with this situation here, you can understand why. I think he's done himself no favours at all here. I think there's no doubt that Port Adelaide will say, yeah, sorry, mate, you can find a different club to play for, and if he can find another club to play for next year, then good luck. I think he's burned his bridges all across the AFL with that sort of attitude. There's no one that's going to want that sort of player at their club, I don't think.
The way our crosstown rival's going, maybe what we do is we say, yeah, we're really keen next year, so they jump on him instead, and sort of he mixes up their playing group a little bit more.
Yep.
Maybe that's the strategy we should take for next year.
I like it. Well, look, let's have a quick chat about some of the other trades. It was quite an interesting trade week in the end. A couple of huge moves. I guess the first one to talk about is the Western Bulldogs and Greater Western Sydney trade, which saw Tom Boyd go to the Dogs for a huge contract, a rumoured $7 million over 7-year contract. For a first-year player that's played only 9 games is a bit ridiculous. And obviously Greater Western Sydney have got the Dogs captain in Ryan Griffin and also pick 6. This is one of the biggest trades done in years. I'm
struggling to think of a bigger one, really. I mean, for the Bulldogs to lose Griffin, when he came out and announced where he was going, I was stunned. And all the hype that Tom Boyd last year, and he lasted 1 season at GWS. Now he's going to the Bulldogs, who, fair play to them. They've been needing a key forward for so long.
For decades. And here they finally get someone.
And they've got one, and I hope for their sake he's the pot of gold that they've been searching for. But, a lot's been made about Tom Boyd. I think the money is a bit much for his age and his output in the AFL, but his potential is phenomenal. You know, he could be anything.
You're playing a lot on potential.
See how he goes next year. Yeah. But their first and second year players are extremely talented. I think they probably need a couple of defenders, but the future isn't looking that bad at the Bulldogs. It would have been great for them if they were able to keep pick 6. I think for the young developing side, it's a huge risk to trade pick 6. I know Boyd was obviously a pretty big draw card, but when you lose Griffin as well and you don't have a coach, it's a interesting one.
I think when you've picked McRae and Stringer and Bontempelli over the last 2 years, I think you can afford to trade away a first round pick when it lands you someone that's rated as a generational key forward. And look, fingers crossed he stays fit and it works out for them. One of the biggest trades done in years. What do you think, Rick?
I don't mind it. I think, I bang on about the need for key forwards, and they're hard to get, and it is speculative based on form, and it is a potential deal, and it is obviously going to be associated with risks. One of the risks, I think, or the biggest risk will be how is a second-year player going to be handling the pressure of a $7 million or $1 million a year contract, basically. How's he going to keep his motivation? Because he's not going to have to he doesn't have to work hard for the money, so to speak. He's just got given a 7-year contract of $1 million a year. Thank you very much. It'd be easy to sort of coast a little bit, So for his sake and the Bulldogs' sake, I'm hoping he's a very performance-driven person. Because his managers, Liam Pickering's done a fantastic job in brokering that deal. And look, in relation to Griffin, I think Griffin had to go after what happened. And, and it's probably a good get for GWS. They need more experience. And Griffin's obviously not Ablett, but he's got that senior experience and he's a fantastic player. So he'll provide some good influence for the midfield group at GWS. So, and it's good to see some big deals. They're good to see. But at the same time, we had one of our local journalists in Rucci talking about what is a contract all week, and where are we going as a league? Is it becoming a bit EPList, and are we going to have more players dictating where they want to go during a contract?
I think the whole comparison made to other world sports is a bit silly though, because like in the English Premier League, for example, there's no salary cap. So at least in Australia, everyone's on an even playing field. Whereas in other sports around the world, that's not the case.
Yeah.
And if you think about, if you're going to use that example, well, surely Collingwood are the richest and most powerful club in Australia, and I mean, they just lost Dane Beams.
Well, that's right, and I also think that players have been dictating where they want to go for years anyway. I mean, it's been happening for decades. You know, you think back to obviously Nick Stevens trying to get to Collingwood and Sean Burgoyne nominating Hawthorn. I mean, it's happened forever. I think people are sort of overrating the impact that free agency has had.
You've got one massive example there, Macca.
What's that?
Ben Jacobs nominating North Melbourne.
Yeah. That was the biggest non-trade done in years, I think, that one. Absolutely.
That was the trade that stopped a country there.
The trade that stopped a nation. Yeah. That's it. Look, I think it's all right. I don't mind it. It's been happening for years. I think people are overrating the impact that free agency has had. And look, I think if you've got the choice of losing someone for nothing and getting what could be a very underwhelming compensation pick via free agency, or you get to trade them for whatever you like the year before, I think having the ability to trade them for whatever you like is the way to go.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
And of course, there are some other big trades as well. Obviously, between Brisbane and Collingwood, Brisbane receiving Dane Beams, a huge pick up there, and also Alan Christensen from Geelong. And Collingwood have received Levi Greenwood, Jack Crisp, and Travis Varco as well. So both of them adding quite a lot to their sides, I think.
Absolutely. I think Brisbane's midfield on paper now looks pretty good. I mean, I think that they are still short in the other areas, but that midfield is absolutely fantastic. I think of Rockcliffe, Redden, Rich, Beams. I mean, Beams is an absolute... I mean, obviously he's very well rated. He's an absolute star, yeah, and he's probably hitting the absolute prime of his career too. So
it is a big loss for Collingwood losing Dane Beams, but they've gained Levi Greenwood, who I think is a admirable replacement. They've also got Travis Varco, who can play the game, and a youngster in Jack Crisp, and they've also managed to get 2 picks in the top 10 as well. Yeah,
but they've done well. I think Varco is a bit of a sleeper there. I think he's going to have a great year for them.
Yep.
I was a bit underwhelmed with Varco this year.
Yeah, he didn't have a good year, but yeah.
No.
He just looked a little bit flaky this year. He seemed to make a lot more errors than what I've ever noticed from him in the past. But, yeah, I'm with you guys. I thought Collingwood did pretty well.
Yep. Also, Geelong, they've picked up Mitch Clark. Hopefully he's over his issues there. And also, a bit of a strange one. They gave up pick 21 for Reece Stanley, which was a bit of an odd move.
Bit of an odd move. I think Geelong thinking that the game's going to be a lot slower by trading Varco and Christensen and bringing in Clark and Stanley.
It's possible.
They've
got a lot of tall depth now.
They have a lot of tall depth, yeah. But yeah, it'll be interesting how they go next year because, I mean, I think Stanley isn't that bad a player. I probably wouldn't have given up pick 21 for him, but obviously St Kilda were happy to do that given the development path that they're going down. So I think that's a bit of a win-win for both.
That's right. Also, North Melbourne, through free agency, have picked up a couple of recognisable names in Jared Waite and Sean Higgins. Obviously trying to top up for a bit of a flag run.
They must think they're very, very close. They must think they're next year
on the
to 2 years. Yeah. I mean, Drew Petrie and Jared Waite are both 32, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's
if they're going to push for a grand final, it's got to be this year or next year. Sorry.
We're calling them Dad's Army.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the more I think about it, I think they've lost. Really. I mean, Higgins is really just injury prone, and so you don't know what you're going to get out of him. Jared Waite's pretty unreliable, and I guess Petrie on the end of his career has sort of become a bit more unreliable as well. And then they've given up Levi Greenwood, who was becoming a very consistent player for them.
The Greenwood trade was almost their own undoing, really, because I think they offered him a 1-year deal, and they just couldn't match with Collingwood. So because obviously they've brought in Big and Waite and Higgins, so I don't think they really wanted to get rid of Greenwood. No,
obviously not. He finished second in their best and fairest. You don't want to get rid of those sort of players, but Yeah, I think they've sort of robbed Peter to pay Paul a little bit with their free agency picks, and I guess hopefully for them it comes off, but there's a big chance that it won't. I think.
And the two West Australian clubs obviously didn't bother turning up. Bit of a long flight. I don't think Fremantle or West Coast did anything in
I think they just stayed down west.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's get on to week 3 of our player reviews. We're going to start with Campbell Heath. 23 years old, he played 14 games of AFL footy for Port Adelaide. Got delisted at the end of the year. He just played the 9 games in the SANFL this year. He had a bit of a shin issue to start the season. Missed a lot of footy at the start, and then obviously he had a knee reconstruction mid-year. Chose to do the last surgery, came back for finals, but really struggled for form in those last couple of weeks there.
Campbell Heath, when he first played for us, I absolutely loved him. I thought he was such a great defender. I thought he was really competitive, did his job well. Unfortunately, I think just injuries ruined him, really.
Yep.
I mean, I think he was just one of those guys. I mean, I don't know what you guys thought. Maybe it was just a personal thing for me, but I really liked him.
No, I was a huge fan of Campbell Heath as well. I thought he looked like an absolute star at the start of 2013 when he came into the side from Sydney and just really shone in that sort of back pocket, that third tall role. But as you said, I mean, injuries has just killed his career. He's a bit of a could-have-been champion now, I guess. 3 knee reconstructions. Unfortunately, despite the immense talent that he's got, he just didn't have the footballing body to get the job done.
That's exactly right. Durability cost him in the end, and I'm with you guys. I thought 2013 he was a fantastic pickup, and I thought he was going to play a few seasons for us of great football, but it's just unfortunate. And in a way, this is going to sound awful, but I'm glad the club made the tough decision that it had to make, because it could have been easy to sort of keep him on the list, irrespective, just to do the right thing. But unfortunately, he sort of had to make way, and it's a bit of a shame for him. And it'll be interesting to see where he goes with his career from here, if he continues on with football and keeps putting himself through those pain barriers, or whether he decides that maybe his body can't handle the AFL or SANFL rigours.
I think all Port Adelaide people wish him the best of luck. He's a great bloke, a great talent, and hopefully in the future he can continue on his footballing journey and really make a name for himself at a state level, maybe, as you said, Rick. Next player on the list, Cameron Hitchcock, another delistee at the end of this season. He was 24 years old. He played 35 games for Port Adelaide. Another who played just the 9 SANFL games this year. He averaged 13 disposals and 1.5 goals per game. Missed 3 months with something that really killed his career, really. Another hamstring injury. He missed 3 months with that mid-year, and it really ruined his season, really.
Another whose body just didn't really seem to hold up to the rigours of playing AFL football week in, week out. He was talented, Hitchcock, but I always just thought he probably just wasn't quite consistent enough. But whether that could do with his body breaking down, it seemed at every opportunity. He
was the player for me that I thought showed the ugly side to our supporter base at times. In 2012, when we weren't travelling that well and he was getting some games, some of the rhetoric he was copying from the sidelines was pretty embarrassing as a supporter, and I thought it was a bit untoward. And for a player that's out there trying their hardest for the club, it wasn't called for. And I actually saw some positives in Cam. I thought he was a player that actually showed that he's got the skills to play, and he had that sort of elusiveness to be maybe that sort of forward crummer that we were looking for at the time. But again, as you pointed out, Macca, he was just another one of those players that's going to go down in the history books that just couldn't handle the impact of AFL football. But hopefully he gets a bit more recognition than what he has with the supporters.
Yeah, well, I think in 4 of his last 5 AFL games, he only lasted a quarter before pinging a hamstring. So you just can't make a career out of that. Unfortunately for him, as you said, I thought he copped a lot of criticism through 2011 and 12, and Was probably a bit lucky to stay on the list as long as he did. But look, I thought he had great talent as well. He was super quick, great goal sense, really good skills. He's a fantastic SANFL player. Make no mistake about that. He's an excellent state level player. Just didn't have the body to get it done at the highest level.
Agreed. Wholeheartedly there, yeah.
Third player that we're going to talk about today is Jackie Homsch, one of the real surprise packets of 2014 for the Port Adelaide Footy Club. He's a 21-year-old key defender. He played 24 games this year, finished 12th in the best and fairest, averaged 13 disposals and 5 marks a game. A real breakout season for Jack. He had great form all year and a very, very good final series as well.
He's pure class, Homshy. He's 21. That's
insane.
That should make every Port Adelaide fan extremely happy. He's going to be one of the best defenders in the competition in the next few seasons. His game on Buddy Franklin in the loss against Sydney at Adelaide Oval this year was absolutely brilliant. Honestly, he reads the play so well.
Can we just throw Jake Need into this conversation for some steak knives as well while we're at it?
Yeah, absolutely.
What a GWS thinking, honestly.
Thanks. Thank you, GWS.
I think Jackie Homsch wanted to come home, but what do we get him for? Something like pick 35 or something like that, and Jake Need as well. I mean, that's just one of the deals of the century right there.
Absolutely.
He was a little bit short. Sometimes we get a bit too obsessed with height in the AFL game, don't we? And, he's still versatile at 193. And as you pointed out, Dom, he played a great game against Buddy Franklin. And, he's been a very versatile defender for us. And he provides a lot of run as well.
He does.
A lot of
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He also had a great game against Hawthorn, against Jack Gunson mid-season as well. I thought he also had a good final against him too, and also against Collingwood. He kept Ben Reid scoreless late in the season there as well. I think the thing that I love about him so much is his closing speed. He's surprisingly quick. You don't really notice it sometimes, but you really notice it when he played on Buddy. That Buddy's probably the quickest key forward going around for the last 10 years. And he was keeping up with him perfectly fine. I think his spoiling ability is absolutely elite. I think he's a fantastic prospect for the future. And, the thing I also loved about his game was just how manfully he battled as the number one key defender when Trengove and Carlisle were out of the side.
Absolutely. I mean, him and Jonas tried their hardest, and even with them out, our defensive scores against were still pretty low. Yeah, look, it's future's bright for us with Jack Homsch, that's for sure, as long as he keeps working hard.
Yep. I'm going to push the Jack Homsch for midfield bandwagon. I think I'm going to start that one up because I reckon he can make an absolutely brilliant midfielder. He's got the size, the strength, the foot skills. Hopefully he would have the endurance as well. But I reckon he'd make a really good midfielder.
There was a few comparisons to Chad Corns, I thought, during the season by a few posters. So maybe there is some potential there.
There is. Get on it. Next player is Jarman Impey. He was our first round pick last year, 19 years old. First season on the list. He played 18 games, won a Rising Star nomination. Picked up 11 disposals and 2.7 marks a game. I think he really surprised everyone with his form throughout the season.
He did, yeah. I mean, he had a really good first season. What I love about him is he's just so quick. He's that fast, and he plays such brave footy. I've got here. He plays Port Adelaide football, and I think. Obviously, a bit more composure would be good, but that'll come with time. But he just takes the game on. I think there was footage of Ken talking to him before, maybe one of the showdowns, one of the pre-game things that we filmed, and he just said, "Mate, just go out there and play footy. It's not hard. Just don't get too nervous and just go out there and run because no one's going to catch you."
No, that's right. What were your expectations of his season at the start of the year?
I wasn't too sure how much he'd play. I actually remember thinking of the three that we drafted that Burn Jones looked like one of the classier ones, and that he might get a gig. But Impey blew me away. I was at that Carlton game in round one. I was really excited to see him play then. And obviously, he didn't get picked for finals, but I think that was the right call in the end. I really am looking forward to seeing his development as a defender as well. That game on Ballantyne, such a young player on such a talented, experienced forward was mind-blowing, really.
Yeah, I thought he was... when we drafted him, it was like everybody else, Jarman who. I didn't know who Impey was, and we obviously had a plan to bring him in. And I thought he was fantastic for us for a first-year player, and his first half of the season was a standout for me in relation to the games played and his maturity. He played with maturity beyond his years. Obviously, the season sort of caught up with him, I guess, towards the end. And we talked about Homch as a rebounding defender. Jarman Impey was right up there trying his hardest. Obviously, he couldn't compete with everybody. There's one great game player in our team that's the best running defender of them all, but he tried to match him as much as he could, and hats off to him. And I think he's going to be better for next year, and we're still needing that lockdown defender next year, so Jarman hopefully still will be the man.
Tommy Jonas is next. He's 23 years old, played 56 games. He played 22 games this season, finished 10th in the best and fairest, averaged 15 disposals and 5 marks a game. Did some fantastic jobs throughout the year, including a very, very big final series.
T. Jonas Nation, what an absolute champion. He's been a fan favourite of the Port Adelaide faithful for years. He's just such a great young leader. I mean, he's as hard as they come, and I hate using cliches, but he's such a Port Adelaide player. Tough, quick, fantastic. Reads the play beautifully. He's the kind of player that you'd want to play with. You'd walk tall playing with him, and he's still so young.
I reckon he epitomises everything about Port Adelaide, and he would fit in any era of Port Adelaide football. He would have been an absolute star under Jack Keogh, under Choco Williams, under Foss Williams. Just that sort of intense style that he brings to the game. His versatility is fantastic. He can play on anybody, tall or small, as he proved throughout the year. I think he's an absolute gun.
Yeah.
No,
he's a great pick. We were talking about rookie picks before, weren't we? He started on the rookie list, didn't he?
He sure did.
Yeah, and they're the sort of things as a club, as we keep evolving and getting better, that's what we need to keep finding. If you found one of him every year, we'd be laughing, wouldn't we? He's an absolute jet, and he's solid. The only time he looked shaky so far in his whole AFL career was when, obviously, as we spoke about with Homch, the two key defenders missing games. But, I'm being very, very nitpicky. Once they came back, he came back to the Tom Jonas of old, and he loves taking the body. He doesn't mind the physical impact. He's not the purist in aesthetically kicking a ball or disposal, but he gets the job done. And, we can't... And when he's on a man, he gets the job done. And I like the fact that we can throw him into the middle to follow someone if we have to, or chuck him into primarily in the defensive unit, and he just gets it done. So, I'm looking forward to how big he's going to be in 2015 and what impact he's going to make. He's going to be huge, I reckon.
Yep, no doubt about that. He had some massive games this year. In round one against Carlton, he shut out Mark Murphy of all players. That shows how versatile he is. And then in the prelim final, I thought he had a great job on Luke Bruce, just to show his defensive ability in those two games. And then he had those two games against Carlton and Richmond at the end of the season, where as a loose defender, he was just unpassable. He was just marking everything in sight, delivering the ball up forward. He's just such a versatile player and a real star.
And that's his best role, I reckon, that loose defender.
Yep.
He just plays it so well.
Yep. Spot on. Next player is Matthew Lobe, 25-year-old ruckman. He's played 67 games, played 24 games this season, finished 5th in the best and fairest, averaged 10 disposals, 2 marks and 31 hit-outs a game. He just worked his butt off all year single-handedly, didn't he?
Herculean.
If any AFL player deserves a rest this off-season, it's Matt Lobe.
It's Matty Lobe. Poor fella.
In that Gold Coast game in the wet, I was exhausted watching him play. I couldn't imagine how he felt. It was just because there was so many ball ups, boundary throw-ins, and it was just him. You know, he must have been knackered, honestly.
I really brought up before though. You reckon he'd be having nightmares about Aaron Sandlands, wouldn't he? He'd have to have Sandlands on his dartboard. I mean, imagine the thought of him having to go up against that guy on his own when Sandy's got back up, you know, resting on the pine, and you know, and as he brought up earlier, and he took him on and fought well. So I mean, his heart's huge, and that's why he's in the leadership group for our club. He's a great leader. He never complains about it. He just gets the job done, and you know, and he. Look, as Macca, you pointed out before, and it's something we've been a little bit critical of over the years, is probably his marking. Let's see, hopefully there might be an improvement with the rest that he might be able to get next year.
Look, I think he should improve out of sight again with Paddy Ryder in the team. And look, as you said, his marking is probably the one part of his game that he does need to improve. Everything else is pretty much spot on, I would think. He had some great games this year as well. Obviously, I think the showdown in round 2, he was fantastic. Against Geelong in round 6, he was excellent. That Gold Coast game you mentioned, Donny, in round 21, he had just a stack of hit-outs and was probably our best player that day. And also the elimination final against Richmond, he tore Ivan Maric to pieces.
He's as competitive as they get, yeah. Also going back one more season, that Collingwood final last year at the MCG, his last quarter was absolutely fantastic.
It was, yep.
Well, I mean, and you could take it back. Was it 2012 when Sam Jacobs beat him up at Footy Park and everyone was banging on about, you know, Sam Jacobs got the hit-out record, and this isn't a Crows thing. That was just the performance of the individual. You know, but everyone was pumping up Sam Jacobs' tyres, and, you know, we were probably thinking, well, where's Lobie at, you know, getting slaughtered like that. And, you know, in 2 short seasons, how he's been able to turn it around, and now he's been able to reciprocate those sort of performances on a couple of ruckmen himself. He's really putting his name up in the pecking order of ruckman in the AFL competition.
He sure is. Tommy Logan, 29 years old, 117 games, just the 3 AFL games this year. He also played 17 games at SANFL level. He had a huge year at SANFL level, playing across half-back and through the midfield. And I thought the 3 games that he did get at AFL level, he performed pretty well.
He's a true club man, Tommy. You know, he'd do anything for us. Is he contracted for next year?
Not yet.
I think he's uncontracted at the moment.
Oh, okay.
And I'd give it to him, if anything, even just from the fact that he's stuck by the club and he's been on the one year contract for so long now. Another year on the list. Like you said, Macca, he's done his job this year. He's supported the SANFL team magnificently with his performances. He's never complained. He hasn't done a gorringe and had a sook. He's just taken it on the chin. He knows where he's at with the club, and I think he should be rewarded for that.
Yep, good call.
And, you know, the other thing, quickly, credit to him, 2011, all I remember is, including myself, everyone bagging out on the poor guy. And then it comes to this year, and most people, more than not anyway, are actually saying, why isn't he in the side? So what he's been able to do and turning it around and getting respect of the supporters, hats off to him.
Yep. Good stuff. Next player on the list, Kane Mitchell, 24 years old, 23 games. Played 10 games this year, finished 25th in the best and fairest. Averaged 14 disposals and 5 tackles a game. I thought he had a great first couple of games when he came back into the side this year. But then he slowly went a bit downhill from there. But I guess the good news for Kane is that it looks like he'll be upgraded to the senior list for 2015.
He's a good sub, Mitchell. Like, I love him when he's playing as the sub, because his running ability is just absolutely. It's so hard to stop when everyone's tiring, and he can come on and give us that extra option. But I just don't think he's good enough at AFL level to compete first 22 week in, week out.
No, I think he's a good emergency sort of that, 25th to 26th sort of player on your list, where if you've got a few injuries, he can come in and do a good job. I think the worst part about Kane Mitchell's game is that he's got Rick, you mentioned just a moment ago Tommy Logan back from 2012. He's got a bit of the Tommy Logans from back then in that every game he sort of plays, he's got a bit of a memorable error that everyone remembers. That missed tackle versus Sydney, you talk about the missed shot versus Essendon in the last minute. There's sort of moments that you remember.
Definitely, yeah. The Sydney one was unforgivable, really.
It was a poor moment, but I thought he did play a couple of really good games this year, especially against Fremantle and Hawthorn.
Yeah.
Against two very good opponents, I thought he did a great job.
Yeah, look, he's not the worst player to ever play the game, that's for sure. It's just, I mean, if he could fix up those little things, it's his decision-making, I guess, and disposal under pressure, he'd be a very good starting 22 player. But until he fixes those little items up, I guess he just has to keep working for his spot in the side. But he probably, when you think about it, with the output that he's performed on our list now for 2 years as a rookie, he probably deserves the opportunity to be on the senior list.
All right, the last player we'll talk about today is Gus Monfries, 27 years old, 191 games, played 17 games this year for 21 goals, finished 19th in our best and fairest. Thought he really struggled to live up to his first season at Port Adelaide in 2013. He struggled for consistency. I think that was largely to do with his injuries, which spoiled his season a fair bit. He could rarely get a run of games going. He had a good start to the season and a fantastic finals series, I thought, but he really struggled mid-year.
He did, yeah. I think when we had that form slump, he was probably the most notable player there. And but when we needed him to come good, he did. His preliminary final game was absolutely brilliant. Luck he took was as courageous as they get. And for anyone who has called him soft in the past, I mean, it was a bit of a up yours to them. His last quarter, he really stood up for us. You got to think that when you talk about his form slump, what's going on at Essendon at the moment, I mean, it's got to play a part. It has to be in your head constantly, you know.
Well, did he go in for surgery in the off season?
I think he was one of the players that was going in for surgery.
In general, just the.
Yeah, but I'm just wondering. I mean, obviously, I agree with you. The Asada stuff would have taken its toll on him mentally, but maybe he was carrying a bit of an injury as well. Because I mean, he'd been coping with the Asada issues quite well until that mid-season slump, which was noticeable for all of us. I was actually a bit disappointed with his output as well, thinking maybe he needed to play in the seconds for a little while just to get a bit of confidence up. But yeah, so who knows? Maybe these guys are carrying injuries that we don't know about, and maybe it was affecting his performance more than we realise. But I'm with you. I thought for all his slump in form, that preliminary final performance made up for it. He was fantastic, and he really gave us. He really gave us an ignition a few times during the game, and respect to him.
His best games all came in big games this year. He kicked 4 goals versus Hawthorn twice. He kicked 3 goals versus Sydney. He was also great against North Melbourne in round 3 and also against Richmond in the elimination final as well. So I think he's certainly a big game player, which follows on from his year last year as well. It's just a matter of him getting his body right. I think he did his hamstring 2 or 3 times this season and just couldn't get a fair shot at it. I think next year, if he can play the whole season, and stay fit the whole season, I think he'll be a fantastic player next year.
Is he one to make your midfield rotations for next year as well?
Me and you.
I think he's already been playing a fair bit in the midfield over the last 2 years. I think he suits that sort of high half-forward flank role pretty well.
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
All right, boys. Well, I think we might leave it there for now.
Good work.
Donnie, it's been great having you back on, mate.
No worries, guys.
Did well, mate.
Cheers.
Rick, as always, buddy.
Yes, sorry for the technical difficulties, but we got there.
These things happen.
They do.
Sweet. All right, boys.
No worries, guys.
Have a good one.
Calm the pair.
Go the
Have
power.
A good night. Calm the pair.
Woo.
Woo.
Calm the pair.
Dog.
Step up on the plate, Dermot.
Every kid in the backyard
with the big trees lined up with the footy before Mum calls you in for dinner. The shot for goal after the siren to win it. Jared Polton, your time has come. Drop punt. Your time has come. What a win.